game of the year and you're a bunch of lames and queers. The defense mode switching to attack mode and when the hell did DLC be? When the hell did it make it that DLC games can be fucking game of the year? When the hell did that happen? Like, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, let's go put that for game of the year while we're at it. What the fuck? Elden Ring, I know freaking hardcore PC / Dark Souls lovers love Elden Ring, but you love it so much, gave it game of the year last year. Why are you putting a freaking DLC as a game of the year? DLC should be its own freaking category. DLC of the year, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. Why is that being lumped in for game of the year? If that dumbass DLC Elden Ring wins game of the year, I'm gonna blow a gasket. Now, the only two options here, what's the other game? I know Astrobot would be my recommendation for game of the year. Mostly because that's pretty much the only game on the list I've played. I'm not a Dark Souls Elden Ring guy, so I don't give a shit about that. And we got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which I wouldn't mind if that game won game of the year either. That game I'm dying to play once I beat 16, but I gotta beat God of War first. I got a list of games to beat before I get to it. But that game looks raw, so I wouldn't mind if either of those two games win. And of course, Metaphor. Freaking Metaphor Fantasio is also on the list, which I'm not a big Persona guy. I love Tokyo Mirage Sessions though, which is a game I'm almost done beating. I love that game, but Persona 5 I couldn't get into because every time you're in a dungeon, like you can't replenish your MP. You have to leave the dungeon, go back to your normal boring ass life or simulation life, or you get to date this bitch and a teacher and all this weird stuff, and it's like, look, I'm trying to do a dungeon here. Why are you making it that I can't replenish my MP and I gotta go back and do this freaking Sims Harvest Moon slice of life simulation crap? So I didn't like that format, so I just put the game down and stopped playing. But Tokyo Mirage Sessions doesn't have that problem. All you gotta do is go back, heal up by drinking some vending machine drink, and then you come back. But Metaphor, I'm not really a big Persona guy like I just said. So if Metaphor wins, I kind of be annoyed at that too. I also feel like Metaphor is just another Persona game, just without the name Persona, so they don't have to be in a high school setting. And my brother is a big Persona 5 fan. He loved that game. And he says that he doesn't really get why people love Metaphor so much because he said that it really doesn't do anything new. It's pretty much the same Persona formula. Yet everyone's freaking praising it as, it's the game of the year and one of the greatest games. I think it's mostly because we haven't had a new Persona game in so long. Persona 5 came out 8 years ago or something. Persona 5 came out I think it's almost 10 years now. That game came out a long ass time ago. So I'm guessing that's why. I guess the Persona fans are just hungry for more. And that's why this game has been getting its ass praised so much, or ass kissed so much. Also, people praising it for its story, which is more fantasy based than is it more fantasy based? I guess it is really more like, like old school freaking swordsmen and stuff like that shit. Old schoolish RPG-ish kind of story. But, it's pretty much like playing an anime because it has a whole bunch of anime cutscenes as well as the gameplay. And people just praising how it. But for me, it's Astrobot. Mostly because it's the most original game in the whole Game of the Year lineup. We got 2 RPGs. We got Elden Ring's DLC getting his ass kissed to a freaking Game of the Year category. And then we got hold on, let me look at the other ones. The other 2 that I'm missing is one of them is a freaking indie game, is Balatro. It's a freaking card game. Are we serious here? Just because any game gets a freaking 90 or above, we're just gonna put it for Game of the Year? Well, it's a beloved indie game, and it's a freaking card game. Why don't we put Yu-Gi-Oh on here too? Where we're at. Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Day came out a year ago. Why the hell wasn't that nominated for Game of the Year? Are you serious here? I love Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm defense mode, but I would never put any Yu-Gi-Oh! Game for Game of the Year for any other reason. Because I know that game is a niche product for a niche loving. It's a niche product. Isn't Game of the Year a game that freaking anyone can pick up and be like, yeah, it's great? Like the same thing with Oscar movies. Then again, with Oscar, sometimes makes the movie of the year some movie that no one gives a shit about, that no one can watch. So what the hell am I talking about? But still, of all the indie games, you're gonna pick a freaking card games because it's addictive. It has a freaking 90. Seriously, Game of the Year, not indie Game of the Year, but just flat out Game of the Year, like it's the greatest thing you ever played. Then we got, and of course we got Black Myth Wukong, which is that Chinese developed game, which a lot of people like. But the funny thing about this is an 81 score. It is the lowest reviewed. It is the lowest reviewed freaking game. It's either one, if not the lowest reviewed freaking Game of the Year nominated game in the history of gaming. Why the hell was this game picked? Because it's popular? Is this a popularity contest? Is this the route we're going now? Where the Game of the Year could just be any freaking popularity contest? So as long as the game's popular, it doesn't matter what critical score it got. As long as it's very popular, then we can go ahead and put it for game of the year. What in the mother of fucks? Now, if this game wins game of the year, that will freaking piss me off. The game of the year should be Astrobot. I know it's a family-friendly game. So what is a family-friendly game? If anything, it should be that the freaking Final Fantasy, the Rebirth, you could say is niche. Not only is it a JRPG, but it's a remake of a game that came out freaking what? Almost 20 years ago? Almost 30 years ago, actually. They're talking about a 25-year-old game here. That's niche. Metaphor, niche. Wukong, you could say, is like the lead, like Elden Ring, but Elden Ring's DLCs. To me, that doesn't really count. And then we got Wukong, which, you know, but then its critical score is low. So to me, this is a slam dunk for Astrobot. There's no reason why Astrobot shouldn't win Game of the Year. Astrobot is actually the most, out of all of them, it's the most accessible. It's a game that anybody could pick up, unless you're just one of those grumpy older people that go, I can't play, you know, family-friendly games or platformers. Gotta play my shooters, Call of Duty. I want to go ahead and shoot some people to fucking death. But unless you're one of those people, it's a game that anybody can pick up. If you're a true gamer, anybody can pick up, a casual gamer, a freaking child, a grown adult, and love the freaking game. It's fun. And that to me should be a game of the year. A game that anybody could pick up and really get into. Not a game like Elden Ring that's pretty much like a Dark Souls game that gets freaking too hard and blah blah blah. Or a freaking DLC version of the same shit. Or Wukong, a freaking Chinese game that got freaking average review scores and somehow had to get in the year because it's popular. Or a freaking random indie card game that a bunch of people are hooked onto, like Hooked on Phonics. All of a sudden, that's supposed to be game of the year because it's very popular. Again, I'm telling you, this is a pop. And in Wukong's case, it's popular, but so it's not a critical score. In Balacho's case, it's popular. So it was a popularity contest now. So now whatever becomes game of the year is just a popularity contest, right? Because Astrobot, just barely sold 2 million at this point, so it's not that popular. But at least it's critically acclaimed by freaking critics, and most fans agree with them as well. To me, this should be a slam dunk for Astrobot. Elden Ring's a DLC. Palacho's a freaking indie card game, and then we got freaking Final Fantasy 7, which if that'd be the only one other than Astrobot that I wouldn't sneeze at. I guess Metaphor as well, even though Metaphor doesn't really do anything too different. I mean, Rebirth at least feels like the actual. Because the Final Fantasy 7 remake, that was more linear because it was just stuck in Midgard. But Rebirth is the actual like meat and bones of what Final Fantasy 7 was. So like to me, it's either that. Metaphor, I guess, is fine as well. But freaking Elden Ring and Balacho and freaking Wukong, to me, they should. If any of those win, I'm gonna be pissed off. I'm gonna be ranting and bitching more so than I am now. Because one's a DLC, one's a freaking card game. Alright? No card game should ever win Game of the Year for any freaking reason. Unless the people that make Game of the Year are just the freaking video game awards, they just freaking feel like pissing people off for no reason. Alright? Last year, you already picked a game last year that nobody gave a shit about and made it win Game of the Year just to fuck around. Don't become like Yoshkas where you always pick the game that no one expects just to fucking surprise people. Don't stop that. Don't pick Balacho. Don't pick Wukong because it says a bad precedent that, hey, you could get an 81 score, Metacritic score, and, still freaking, win because of popularity. And Balacho's a freaking indie game and on the DLC, that's a bad precedent. That means you get, as long as you have a real popular game and didn't win last year, but hey, if you put a good DLC out, we'll be able to freaking get that game in there. Unfreaking believable. The Game of the Year picks for this year is fucking trash. It sucks. Metaphor, 7, and Astrobot were fine, but the other 3 was just fucking dumbass choices. I mean, seriously. I don't even know what other games came out this year that could be in category. Like I said, I would have to sit down and look at it, but like half the choices are good and then the other half choices are trash. But that few games came out in the last year, you had to pick a freaking DLC for Elden Ring. I mean, seriously. This Game of the Year, and I saw a few other categories for a few of the other games, and just, it's not that good. They could have had a whole bunch of. Matter of fact, I don't even know. I'm looking at this list here. But it couldn't be that that few games is coming out now that they had to choose that. It can't be that we have such few choices this year that we have to go and result to freaking picking a freaking indie game, a freaking DLC of a game that came out last year, the year before. Pick a game that has a freaking average freaking review Metacritic score and a fucking indie game. Is this what we're coming down to for Game of the Year? Or did you just have to fill out the spots just to fill them out, but then you you got like 2 or 3 solid choices you really want to pick for Game of the Year, and then the other 3 it doesn't matter, so you just pick any fucking thing to cover your bases, right? Well, the Elden Ring fans are pissed off. The Elden Ring didn't get Game of the Year last year, so let's go ahead and throw the DLC there to kind of give them hope. And let's throw in a very popular indie game so that the indie loving crowd freaking throw them a bone. And then Wukong, yeah, I got an average Metacritic score, but it's real popular, so we put it for a nomination Game of the Year. People will freaking wet their pants. That's what I think. This is like a calculated business decision where they try to cover all bases to satisfy everybody, so everyone's really into it. Because Lord knows, you know, your nominations are probably even more important than who wins. Because if you have nominations for certain games that people are really gonna love in masses, like if you pick really popular games that people are really interested in possibly win Game of the Year, people are gonna be, you know, overly excited and looking forward to it and can't wait to see the show and blah. So to be honest with you, I think that's what's going on here. Because these choices are just odd. I mean, picking Game of the Year shouldn't be hard. All you gotta do is look at the Metacritic score for all the games that came out the last year, and just start picking everything that has a 89 to 80, like anything that has an 89 or above. You just put them on the table and then you start throwing darts. Okay, which one is better than which? All right, let's start cutting categories. Let's have one for JRPGs. Okay, let's one have for this, one for that. You know, you just start picking. But to me, it looks like they're just trying to cover all bases. Pick one indie game, pick one very popular game, even though its rating doesn't really count for it. And yeah, the Elden Ring fans are pissed off last year. Put the DLC there. But it's a DLC, and we'll change the rules. Don't worry about it. That's what I think is happening here. This is freaking ridiculous. Now, who do I want to win? I want Astrobot to win. Who do I think is going to win? That's a tough question. It's either going to be Metaphor or Wukong. That's my opinion. I don't know why, but I got a feeling it's either going to be Metaphor or Wukong. One of those two are going to win. It can't be Balatro. I don't think they're that fucking stupid. It can't be Elden Ring's DLC either. Because come on, if you could have made Elden Ring win last year. Why the hell are you trying to do this year? I don't think a freaking DLC should win Game of the Year because that'll set a bad precedent. What's the bad precedent? Oh, that you could pretty much do a freaking expansion pass and freaking win Game of the Year. If you want to put it for a nomination, fine. Because well, I guess not as much games are coming out every year now. If you're that desperate, whatever. That's the precedent you want to set. But I think it's either gonna be Metaphor or Wukong. I think they'll probably make Wukong win just throw the so they can throw a bone to our Chinese overlords. They're gonna take over one day. Want to satisfy them. Maybe that conspiracy theory that Chinese has pretty much ran our government already, or pretty much overthrown our government, or we're working behind the scenes. Or maybe they took control of the video game awards too, and just went ahead and just threw their freaking Wukong game in there. It's gonna win the whole fucking thing. But I believe it's either be Metaphor or Wukong, as long as it's not Elden Ring. Because the DLC, I mean, come on, that's still pissing me off. A freaking DLC is gonna win Game of the freaking Year. But I really want Astrobot to win. If Astrobot would have won Game of the Year, I'll be perfectly happy. I'll be the first one making a video celebrate. So, in conclusion, that's my ranting and bitching for the day. This is Attack Moses back with the fence.